Hello, everyone. My name is Allie. I am the co host of the Goddess Vibration podcast, and I am also co founder of our Patreon community called the Higher Vibe Tribe.
And this is Tiara, co-host of the Goddess Vibration podcast, also co-founder of the Higher Vibe Tribe.
Are here today because we are going to give you guys another channeling session. We received a lot of positive feedback from our first channeling session, and we wanted to give you guys another one. And we suspect that we'll do a couple more of these for our YouTube page, but ultimately these channeling sessions go in our community. So if you are liking the content here, please check out our community because this isn't something we are going to continue doing long term, just short term, but there it gives you guys a chance to get to know us, how we channel as a pair. Typically Tiara and I, one of us will be the sitter, one of us will be the channeler. We can both channel though. So if a entity wants to come in on my end, then I will channel that entity if they don't want to be channeled by Tiara. So it's interchangeable, but for the most part, we keep it sitter, channeler, just to let the conversation flow, make it easier for everyone, including the entity.
Absolutely. So the focus and the format's going to be just like last time. And we've left the conversation relatively open, but we're going to focus on the topic of imposter energy, imposter syndrome. We have talked about that on our podcast if you listen to the Goddess Vibration. So this is kind of like a continuation of that discussion. So hopefully some good information will come through.
Yes, so let's get started. So Tiara is just going to collect her energy, and I am going to welcome any and all high vibrational entities, beings to come join our channeling session to discuss imposter syndrome from people and entities.
So yeah, I have Toth here.
Talk always comes through.
He
Always.
always comes through.
Hello, Talk. How are you?
Hello, Ellie, Tiara. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So Tiara and I just actually recorded for our podcast. We had a special guest named Mark Collins who discusses imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome, the way that he basically describes it is you are not the programming that we are being told. You are essentially the creator of your own life. And so many people operate from what we're told versus living authentically. And he's a transformational coach, and basically he works with his clients to get them out of that imposter syndrome, like not being defined by what you're told but versus creating your own life. So we would like to get your take on what imposter syndrome is.
He has a firm grasp on what imposter syndrome is at its core, but generally, it is this sentiment that we carry within ourselves that we are either not up to the task or not good enough. And it often stems from programming from our past or wounding from our past or our childhood, things that we have internalized or that are even existing at the subconscious level. It keeps us disconnected from our true purpose and from our true selves and from that authentic space that we are meant to step into and operate from. So I do think that as far as his description of it, that it is very accurate and that he has done a good job of compartmentalizing it so that the general public and the general population can understand. I do notice that for you and Tiara, the focus is of more of a spiritual nature. And of how individuals in this community often operate and provide services or give wisdom, even though at their core they are suffering from imposter syndrome or imposter energy. So I do respect that both perspectives and both understandings of the concepts is shared.
So, if so many people do struggle with imposter syndrome, what advice do you have for these people? Like, how do people get past the programming? How do people get past, being told you are this?
It really takes courage and strength to look at yourself and the way you've been operating, your behaviors and your patterns, and realize and understand that they're not for your best and highest, that perhaps your behavior has been destructive or has kept you from achieving or attaining your goals. So, for anyone who wants to achieve and attain their goals, or perhaps they are stuck in repeating negative patterns or cycles that have kept them from realizing some of the things that they really want to do, it's really important to have the courage and strength to look at your behaviors, but also to go back further than that, dive deep into your past and some of the traumas, and stare and analyze the beliefs that you took from those encounters and experiences. Because it is those beliefs that you are carrying from those experiences that are affecting you now and that are keeping you from achieving and attaining the goals you wish.
That is all very profound. And it is a hurdle for people to overcome that. I know it was a hurdle for me personally. I know Tiara is going through it particularly right now. And it's not easy to look at yourself. And I wish more people would have the courage to do that. But this seems to be the part of the journey where people get turned off and people don't want to look at themselves or people are not ready. And that's okay if you're not ready. We just hope one day you will be ready, or people just run and they get very comfortable running.
During that conversation, the gentleman framed it in a way that I think you and Tiara both grasped and understood quite well, which was in regard to goals and goal setting and evaluating whether doing that deeper reflective work is worth it when it comes to the goal you wish to attain. Perhaps that's something that people should consider when they're considering shadow work and exploring deeper aspects of the wounded psyche. Evaluate if doing this work is worth you attaining your goals and dreams that that you hold so close and so dear.
Is there any other way for a person to overcome imposter syndrome other than looking at themselves and examining that behavior and examining the patterns?
Well, I do think that it's going to require additional supports. I don't think it's anything that anyone can do alone necessarily. Perhaps there are some individuals out there who have the capacity to do so, but for many, it requires additional support and additional feedback and someone to help walk you through some of the darker aspects of the psyche because it's not easy to do and it's very, very difficult to do alone. So if someone's interested in doing that, I would definitely advise finding some type of support structure, a group or a mentor or a guide, one who has done that level of work.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom there. I absolutely wholeheartedly agree, which is why TR and I have the community because we have gone through a lot of what you're talking about. When it comes for people when they're ready, and they start looking to find healers or support, what should these people look out for? What should they look for in a person? I always typically say it's really important that you feel connected intuitively because doing this type of work is very intimate and it's very vulnerable work. And so it's really important that you form that connection. So that's what I always advise. But do you have something further you would like to share?
I do agree that there should be an intuitive connection, or at minimum, the individual should have the discernment when it comes to selecting someone to know that they are a fit for their needs and are there to provide services for their best and highest. But I think it's also really important that you find someone who has navigated at least through some of their shadow and understands what that work entails from their own perspective, because it can assist with providing the needed support, but also when it comes to navigating through the shadow, it helps develop wisdom, and the other individual can help you as far as they have gone. So I do think that there are multiple components that should be considered and taken into consideration when it comes to finding someone, those two being of most significance.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for that. I do want to touch briefly on anyone who is in their spiritual journey, either has the gift of channel or has the gift of mediumship or have the gift of just becoming more in tune with yourself and you receive downloads. I want to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome when it comes to entities who make claims like, oh, I'm your guide, or I'm on your spirit team, or how would a person, and I know we've discussed this in other channelings, but this is for YouTube, but outside of discernment, it's like, how would a person be able to protect themselves or know that the entity they're talking to isn't who they say they are?
This is tough. It's unfortunate that so many encounter imposter entities, and these entities do substantial damage. They reassure the individuals, can mask their frequency and come through in a way that isn't for the best and highest of the channeler. And unfortunately, many of them don't have that level of discernment to know that. I think one of the things that channelers need to keep in mind when it comes to channeling entities is that their perspective and perceptions affect the messages coming through. And if one is carrying specific thought forms or belief systems that are perhaps destructive or not rooted in facts or reality, they can attract entities or beings who will exploit that. And they will exploit that for their own benefit. These are entities or beings that you guys have referred to as service to self oriented. And unfortunately, they are effective at infiltrating the thoughts and the thought forms of channelers who only want to serve the collective. Channeling is a process, it's a journey. And if one wants to become a successful channeler, they must journey through the self and journey through their beliefs, the thought forms, and the perceptions that they carry and correct them. So not only raise their vibration to be in alignment with these higher beings, but also so that the message comes through in the most unbiased, unfiltered manner. That takes time, it takes practice. It is in and of itself a mini spiritual journey.
So, are you saying that the ego can alter the perception of said download or said message?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and it often does. We see it often with other channelers and other individuals who have profound followerships, who are renowned channelers, but the information that they share is not always aligned with the best and highest. Now, if one is a channeler, they can get to that place. It is just going to take deep introspection and reflection. It's going to take time. It would help if these individuals had guidance or supports in regards to this or around this. It's very unfortunate that there are not very many channelers in the collective who are offering coaching or guidance in the way that is for the best and highest of someone who wishes to channel effectively. But we at least know of one specific area where that journey can at least be supported. I am referring to the higher vibe tribe. It's just that, again, as a channeler, you really need to do your diligence. When it comes to the discernment, that is something that takes time, it takes practice. It also takes trust in oneself and one's abilities. And it's important that the channeler not carry distortions or have issues trusting themselves when it comes to their abilities, which is something we see often too. There are many channelers who don't necessarily trust fully in their skills or capabilities, and that can be exploited by service to self oriented beings. So, again, channeling is a journey. It takes time, practice, and effort. But if someone wants to become proficient in it, I'm hoping through sharing this message that they have some guidance when it comes to that.
Very interesting. So I have a question. Is does it when a person gets a download, does that mean that it's channeling or mediumship? Is it like the beginning of becoming a channeler? Or because I feel like lots of people get downloads. Like, does it just come from intuition? Does it come from an entity?
Downloads come from various sources. It could come from the higher self, spirit guides, or the spirit team. It can be intuited, but it's not necessarily the same as opening one's frequency up to the channelings of any higher vibrational being. Because with channeling, you have to be able to take incoming information or an incoming message and deliver it in a manner that is comprehensible to the masses without any distortion or without filtering through one's own distorted perceptions. I think that that's where many people struggle. And even when it comes to downloads, that can still be an issue. So I suppose you could say that when it comes to downloads, there's those are typically quite personal. Now you do have people publicly sharing their downloads, but not in the same capacity as you do people who are channelers. So for the channelers, there's more of a need to work through the minds and make sure that you are not afflicted by destructive thought forms. Versus with downloads, the risk is perhaps not as great because those are typically more personal. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I feel like a lot of people who get downloads think that they can channel,
Mm.
and I think that there's a very clear distinction between the two, and I just want to get clarity. So, a lot of interesting stuff. I know that, I mean, I know a lot of people also struggle with spirituality because, you know, the collective people typically want proof, and a lot of people will say, well, how do you know that? And it's the thing about channeling and spirituality is that not everything is explainable. There are things that you just instinctually know. And it's just interesting how a lot of people, especially if you're in 3D, if you're in a 3D frequency, a lot of people will question and say, well, where's the proof? How do you know that's real? And I think that's where working with people at a 3D frequency, I think that's where it kind of gets messy, not messy, just more obstacles because, people want proof.
People want proof because they have been programmed that what you could see is indicative of the truth. We sort of exist in this space where it must be seen, it must be observable, it must be something that can be touched or measured. But that limits our perceptual reality to a very narrow level. It discards the fact that humans are intuitive beings and can pick up on things outside of that which can be measured. That's a fact and a reality for many on the spiritual journey who have experienced things that cannot be measured and cannot be explained, but they feel it and they know it to be truth because it's their truth. So, if there's anything I'd like to share around that, it's that physical reality is much more than what you've been told or programmed to believe. Reality exists beyond that which can be observed and measured. And there are at least some components of, or some aspects of your government that do recognize that.
For people in the 3D frequency who are looking for something real, can you share your opinion on what's going on in this planet and how deep the programming really goes, and just encourage anyone who watches this to start their healing journey?
So I have Zeus here who's been wanting to come forth.
Zeus,
Hello, Ali.
hello. Do you want to answer the question I just asked? Because you seem eager.
Yes, he's very eager. So, Ali, can you repeat the question once more for him?
Absolutely. So I was just asking for anyone at a 3D frequency who might be awakened, but only awakened, does not know what to do with their awakening, where to turn. Can you offer some insight on what is going on this planet, how deep the programming really goes, how it affects you, and any encouragement you have for anyone to start their healing journey?
Well, with an awakening comes a new awareness and a new understanding of your existence, what has been deemed your physical reality, and what it all means. I think that with those awakenings, it sort of lends itself to being a starting place for further journeying. I know that an awakening can be very jarring, especially a sudden awakening that perhaps wasn't necessarily preceded by any particular experience. But an awakening is an opportunity, and then an opportunity to redirect your life away from what you've been taught and programmed to believe and towards something that is more aligned with your deepest desires, dreams, and goals, a life that is for your best and highest, essentially as a way to manifest your dreams in the physical. It's unfortunate that under some of the programming, people have been told to disregard their dreams, that their fantasy, in exchange for existing in a matrix, working a 9 to 5, stuck in an existence that leaves so many feeling depleted. That's not what existence here was meant to be. That's not what Earth is for. Everyone's being given this opportunity to extend beyond that, beyond the programming and beyond what they've been taught. They're being encouraged to exist in a way that is outside of the typical norm because we know that the norm is destructive to the psyche and to the self. And if you know that, then why would you continue to perpetuate that? The goal and the focus should be to reach for other forms of existence and ways of living, even if that means a simpler existence, even if that means letting go of everything you've already known or exploring the unknown. Because if that means peace and contentment, happiness, and a manifestation of your dreams, why would you not at least explore that chance and opportunity?
Okay, I love the message. It's very beautiful, and I wholeheartedly agree. I want to ask about it's basically like we have to reprogram ourselves, and we don't really have a teacher. We don't have anyone really walking beside us, reprogramming us. And
Mm.
I feel like the fear of the unknown is what most people are afraid of. That's what keeps people stuck, is that people want guarantees. I have worked with people in my coaching that was like, well, how do you know? And I want a guarantee. I want to
Mm.
know what I will get coming out on the other end if I give up this. And there are no guarantees in life. It's just you have to trust the process. And I feel like so many people can't or don't want to because, it's like you said, are you willing to give up everything that you've ever known? And that even might mean giving up your comforts in life in order to make change.
It was mentioned earlier that it takes great courage and it takes great strength and fortitude to realize that your way of existence and being isn't what's best for you. We understand the fears around the unknown because unfortunately the programming around fear is very heavy. But life is about taking risks and life is about taking a leap of faith and life is about working through your fears and exploring your fears in some regards and facing them head on and asking the question if those fears are real or if they're valid.
Think that is very difficult for a lot of people because I feel like the ego justifies your reasoning. And I know how powerful the ego is, and I know how hard it is to overcome that. But I think that's where a lot of people are stuck in the collective right now. And that has been our biggest hurdle with, getting our message out and trying to reach and help as many people as possible.
Fear is an illusion.
It is.
It's always been
Agreed.
an illusion. It will always be an illusion. The fear isn't real. The fear is the hindrance.
So the governments use fear as a form of controlling people. Like, because obviously they control our news, they control what we see on social media, at least they're trying to. They control what we study in school, they control everything. Like, they have put us in the system. They are just like, they have turned us all into modern day slaves where, we go and break our backs for 9 to 5s and make other people who are already wealthy who own these companies even more rich while we all suffer. So I think the most important message that I want anyone who watches this is ask yourself, like, do you want to continue in this existence? Because this is what we're living right now is and it's not getting any better. They are making it more and more difficult for people to become quote unquote free.
You said suffering, and I think that that's a very poignant word because when it comes down to it, one must decide if the suffering is worth the existence. If the current state of existence that they're in, while it may be comfortable, is worth the suffering. Because if it's not, then why not explore another option, even if it is scary, even if there are unknowns? Nothing in life is guaranteed. Outcomes are not
Correct.
guaranteed, but you won't know if there's a better way of existence or something else to your existence, or if you're even made for more than what you're currently experiencing without exploring it or taking that risk.
Correct.
So
Thank you so much.
ultimately, what is there to lose?
Well, I think some people think that they're gonna lose their house, or they'll lose their job, or they'll lose their income, and they'll lose their, state of being, their comforts.
What are comforts except material material items or material things that we have been programmed to believe that we need? One can exist without said comforts and be perfectly content and peaceful, be happy and fulfilled. Do those things provide fulfillment? And if you are suffering and you exist in a state of pain and despair, but you do have these things, then perhaps it's not even about the material comforts.
Is that part of the programming, material comforts? Because I know for me personally, I felt for sure it was, like, I measured my success on the type of things that I owned because that's kind of what I was taught, and I had to reprogram that, for example.
It is, particularly in the West, which has a very consumption based economic model. People are programmed to believe that they need things, physical
Mhm.
things, to be happy, to be content, to be comfortable. That's the false program. And having things is not an indication of happiness, peace, or fulfillment
Or worth.
or worth.
Well, before we wrap up this session, I would like to give our viewers a little bonus, a little just something fun. I wanted to ask about timelines because I feel like I see a lot of stuff on social media regarding timelines, and I just thought that, this might be a little fun bonus thing. So, first of all, do we technically exist in a multiverse? There are multiple realities, multiple timelines, and we exist on set all these said timelines, and so there's multiple realities that we all live in.
Not only do we exist as multidimensional beings amongst many different timelines, but that number is infinite. There is an infinite number of timelines with infinite different outcomes that exist that can't be counted or measured.
And quantum jumping is a real thing then. If say if, we want to quantum jump into a better reality, because we know that it exists elsewhere.
I'm not quite sure what you mean by quantum jumping. Are you talking about someone who can shift their reality based on their frequency, or someone who can traverse amongst multiple timelines?
Either. How about either? Let's go with either.
Both are theoretically possible. I believe when it comes to adjusting one's frequency to specific timelines, that that's the piece that most are familiar with, and that's something that everyone is doing all the time, every day.
Because
They sort
energy
of
is always changing.
correct. Energies are always changing. We evolve and we grow, and as that happens, our frequency shifts and changes, and then we align to a timeline that is of that same energetic match or frequency. When it comes to traversing timelines, that is something that is much more rare. While we do know there are individuals who can do it in specific trance states, it's not very common, but it is theoretically possible.
I love that. That's so cool. Now, is either what you described astral traveling or considered astral traveling, or is that something completely different?
There are many who do traverse timelines in the astral states or within that energetic realm. So while yes, astral travel is a thing that many can experience and many have experienced, most who do the quantum jumping or timeline travel tend to do it within that realm, typically in some type of altered state or trance state.
Very cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little bonus tidbit about the universe and how it works and what happens when you change your frequency and what's waiting for you if you change your frequency. I know that my life has really transformed shifting through the frequencies. And, I know Tiara, like I said, is going through it right now. And it's a really beautiful thing. And so, again, we, including Zeus and Toph, who joined us today, would encourage you all to start your healing journey. Or if you have questions, like, don't be afraid to ask.
This is great. Thank you. This has been fantastic. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Tiara, do you have anything you would like to add before we close out?
I don't, but I love what came through today. It was fantastic. Thank you, Zeus. Thank you, Top. Yeah. All right. Take care, you guys.
Take care. Thank you.